I'm looking at this room and I see a couple people that I used to work for, Bill Thomas and our rocket scientist Vern Ehlers. I've spent 50 years working on election-related law questions, and it's certainly a pleasure to be invited to testify for this committee on an interest in an area where I've basically spent my whole professional life on. I used to be counsel to the Ohio Elections Commission and the Secretary of State. I used to work for the RNC, and then I was in private practice for a long time as outside counsel to this committee on election law matters and contests. This committee has always been composed of very serious individuals. Some of the most prominent individuals in the history of the Congress have served on this committee. Many former speakers of the House. In fact, most recently, there was a Republican speaker who used to be a staff director of this committee, Kevin McCarthy. So this is a very distinguished committee, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity to be here. There was a time when election laws were viewed as an area of cooperation between the two political parties. If you look back at history, the most important election changes in my lifetime was the 1964 Voting Rights Act, which was supported by a majority of Republicans and a majority of Democrats. It had Democrat and Republican sponsors. All the revisions to that act received substantial bipartisan support. HAVA, to a large degree, had bipartisan support. We've even had campaign financing regulation, H.R. 5010, that came out of this committee. That was a bipartisan bill. Unfortunately, the motor voter bill was not. It ended up being passed on a partisan line. So what I would suggest to you is the value of cooperation between the two political parties, because as a starting point, that cooperation is vital to the confidence in the process. So as you've mentioned, there are really basically two things we're talking about here, which is increasing the level of voter registration and improving the quality of the registration list. And I have no dispute with the notion that the motor voter increased the number of people registered to vote. You have more people registering to vote post-motor voter. Of course, there's a balance there. What motor voter did was invite into the registration business a whole variety of locations where it was secondary to their principal purpose. So it's, by definition, by putting voter registration activities in locations other than county clerks, secretaries of state, and other election offices, you're going to have people who have other things to do. And then when they get the voter registration, they'll have to transmit that to the election authorities. So those two present problems. I would say that one can look at motor voter and be comfortable that it increased the number of people registered to vote. I'm not so sure you can be sure what its impact is on the actual voter turnout. Now, the quality of voter state lists is a mixed bag. Some states have very high quality voter lists and some don't. So this committee needs to continue to be concerned about the quality of the voter list because of the changes in our system. Our system is much more male-centric than it used to be. The male systems all arise from a central core. The spine of that process are voter lists. If you have bad voter lists, then you have bad voting processes. So we need to be more concerned about the quality of voter lists than we might have been in the past. The additional big change has been in the number of people who live in the country who are resident aliens. Now, I personally have no knowledge of any significant number of non-resident aliens or illegal aliens, resident aliens or illegal aliens, voting. But I absolutely have knowledge that there are many people concerned about this issue. I have no doubt that it occasionally occurs. So we need to be concerned about the lists whether it's simply a question of perception or reality, frankly, makes no difference. We need to have an election system with two prime directives. One, that the winner wins, the person with the most votes wins, and two, that rational supporters of the loser believe the winner won.